What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Alan TCG, and we're not in the Alan TCG channel this time. Kind of shocked. You guys can see with the little glowing avatar, like, ooh, saying something. Ooh, look at this. Um, yeah, we are in the Dragonverse channel this time. You already been knowing that I've been working with the Dragonverse so much. I've been releasing already the 2 episodes of my show of the Dragonverse. That is Yu-Gi-Oh! Abyss. Of course, it's 2 prologue episodes explaining the sort of the introduction of some characters that are going to be important later on. But that's besides the point, right? Episode 1 is the next one. But another thing I wanted to do is the deck profiles of those characters, right? Because I've been seeing Samuel doing the deck profiles of his show characters, Dookie doing, I'm pretty sure, his deck profile. Could be wrong. I'm not going to remember off the top of my head right now. So I decided to make the ones from Prologue, and who knows, maybe I'll make ones for episode 1 as well in the future. So for now, I'm going to be doing 3 deck profiles. Of course, they're going to be all separate, right? Like, I'm doing this one now, that is Epsilon. If you don't know who Epsilon is, this guy is the cloaked figure that played Dogmaticas in Prologue 1. Yeah, the one that took over Jeffrey Winston's body. So do keep that in mind. And the theme of this deck is fairly simple. It's Dogmatica for like the part of the archetype. But the other part of the deck is monsters that give themselves to the opponent or give a monster to the opponent. So cards like Dogmatica Matrix can do its stuff. Let's just say it like that. Because if you guys don't know, Dogmatica Matrix, when activated, it has a Dogmatica Ritual monster or Ritual spell from deck to hand. But if your opponent controls a monster, which is usually what we're doing with this deck, it gets us another Dogmatica card. So we're getting 2 cards for the price of 1. And we're going with the monsters that give themselves or give a monster to the opponent very soon. So for now, let's just go in order here. I tried to make this as a more comprehensible deck profile of some sort on bits and bits of the deck. So the Dogmatica engine is just the heart and soul of the deck. It's like the main reason that's the deck that he plays pretty much. It's pretty nice, you know, like Ecclesia, very good card, is like the heart and soul of your deck. You just want to get into this as fast as possible. Because when you're not getting to Matrix, you need to get to Ecclesia, because Ecclesia gets you into Matrix. And we have several copies of Ecclesia in this deck. Aiden is a option that works for Ecclesia. Like, you could technically cut it, but since we're doing character decks, I might as well put it in. He can float into Ecclesia, and Ecclesia can search other stuff, so it's alright. And also, it's a free summon in some cases, so I think that's alright. Ashion is also a very nice one too. You can work on turn 0 in technicality to a point that you could like use him and Fleur de Lis to negate, but that's very niche. The one thing that he's here for is that he's recyclable. Like, we can recycle things. We can recycle Albazoa, can recycle any other Dogmatica card and just reuse it again, which is very nice. He's just cool. Like a good enough one of, honestly. Dogmatica Maximus is another one that is decently important, but not in the same way as Ecclesia or Dogmatica Matrix, because Maximus is part of the combo to like send 2 and then do something, but you can't do it on his own, right? Like, if you draw Maximus, it feels kind of bad. So you just play 1. 1 Fleur de Lis, you can play 2. I prefer 1 because you don't need more than 1, honestly. Might as well have space for other stuff. Quem and Cartesia are also very interesting. Quem, you usually summon off Lula Waylif that you use after you make like Albazoa. Because then you can Quem revive Cartesia. Cartesia fuse into Grand Guignol. Again, Grand Guignol can send something like a Malong to like bounce something, which is pretty good. Very nice. And then we have the rituals. Albazoa, the big bad of the deck. Like, you really usually gonna want to make this turn 1. Like, you prioritize Albazoa over any other of the rituals. Like, if you already have Albazoa, great. But and then you make the others. But usually that's like your go-to guy. He rips half of the extra deck. He makes your stuff unaffected by extra deck monsters. just very good card all around, honestly. White Knight of Dogmatic, I never summoned this in like any testing or any sort, but it's an okay card. Like, it can do something, and also other decks play it too. So I didn't see the reason on not cutting it. Like, it can be useful in some matchups, like ripping an extra deck or another. Though you could argue to cut it out, but in a character deck, I think it's okay. White Relic can help you close games because if you summon White Relic while Albazo is on the field, you have like 4K and 45, which is like 8,500, which is pretty cool. And they also protect your Dogmatica monsters from being destroyed by battle, right? Your level 8 or higher Dogmatica monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle, which means Albazoa gets more protection out of this, which is very nice. Dogmatica Nation. It's not something I play in like a real Dogmatica deck, or no one I think does. But it's cool for this. Like, it has some sort of protection for Dogmaticas. And if it dies, it rips a card from the extra deck. So I think that's okay. Like, from your own extra deck, okay? It doesn't rip from the opponent. But it's still pretty good. I think it's still pretty nice. Dogmatica Schism, another card is just filler, you know, just a character deck, just gonna put some stuff in. This gives more attack, so you can make big numbers too, so I think that's okay, it's not that bad. Dogmatica Calamity, that's your go-to ritual spell, because that's the one that sends Luluela from the extra deck to the graveyards for you to summon your Albazoa, so that is something to really keep in mind. Dogmatica Macabre is also a very good follow-up card because it can revive stuff like Albazoa, but it can also like summon stuff like the White Relic or the White Knight. It's a very decent card. It's a quote-unquote monster reborn, I guess, for this deck. Dogmatica Matrix, this card is nuts. Just literally you add 1, and then if your opponent has a monster, add 2. Like how I already explained. That's the reason we're playing the deck this way. Well, at least for Abyss, anyway. I don't know if it would be that good for competitive, because I did try the deck and it's like not that crazy. Now, Dear Servant. So this card is also extra copies of Ecclesia. It's a going second card. Like, this card is just nuts in all the ways. It does so much. Like, you would think that a card that locks you out of the extra deck wouldn't do too much. But he actually does. Like, it can pop, it can search, it just does so much, man. That card is so good. Fusion Deployment, that works usually with Cartesian, right? You could definitely just Fusion Deployment, summon Cartesian, then fuse into your Gugino at some point, which is nice. Usually I would also play Albas, but I'm not playing Albas in this deck because there's gonna be a reason for it that you guys are gonna see in the future of the show. Dogmatica Turgi, yeah. This one is the ritual on the opponent's turn. It could be interesting, right? Like, to summon Albazoa, like in the opponent's turn, like they don't expect it. Or you can just summon the White Relic and have like a big guy. I don't know, it's alright. I don't think it's terrible. I personally think it's pretty good. Dogmatica Punishment, crazy card, like we... Don't even talk about this card. This card is just crazy. And we're playing 1 because we can search it, right? Like, we could technically play 3, but I think it's too excessive. Like, playing 1 is enough. We can just get it out of the search or get it back and do our stuff. And we have space for other stuff as well, for like Dragonverse decks. That's usually what we tend to do. Summoner Monk is just another way into Ecclesia. We have a quite selection of spells, so Summoner Monk could be discarding a spell to summon Ecclesia from the deck and get the Dogmatica Matrix into your hand, which is pretty nice, honestly. Nothing to say about it, it's just pretty good. DD Guide is one of the monsters that we decided to choose as well for the give your opponent a monster. We have a very few monsters that do that, outside of like maybe Kaijus, but Kaijus don't work turn 1 because your opponent won't have anything to for you to like give them a Kaiju for anyway. So DD Guide is definitely one of them. It's just decent. Like, you just give it to the opponent, do your stuff, and then through each player's end phases, your opponent keeps banishing like stuff, which is very nice. Ken and Gen. Those are like the ones that made me want to make this deck this way. Because usually when I was playing Dogmatica in a more serious manner, I was playing 3 Gen, 1 Ken, and then I would be like, Gen summons Ken to the opponent's field and then draw to discard 1, and then that I could also use Dogmatica Matrix. And that was like what made me build this deck this way, because we give it to the opponent, the Matrix at 2, and then those have extra effects too. For example, this is basically an Angel Baton, if you guys know stuff from the 5D's anime, or and Gen is the one that rips a card from the opponent's hand, right? Like or the player that controls Gen, right? In this case is usually your opponent in this case, and then they lose a card, and you're gonna get more cards. So just very nice. Silent Wobby is also interesting. It has some other weird applications, like your hand size become 3, which it's very irrelevant for a deck like this. But the biggest like relevance this card has is that it just summons to the opponent's field, and it's a special summon. So that's why I like Wobby to a degree. Like I do like Wobby just for this reason. Like the fact you can just give it to the opponent like for free, and then just normal summon Ecclesia is just huge. And to be honest, gaining 2000 life points could sorta matter. Draw 1 card does suck, but yeah, I think that's okay. Rhoda is just extra copies of Gen and Ken, because they're both level 3 warriors, so we can search them with Rhoda. The other part of this deck, so I mentioned that you would normal summon something to give it to the opponent and then like do your Dogmatica plays, like with Matrix, for example. But there's a third part of this, because as you can see, we are very heavy on normal summons, right? Like we have like 3 Gen, 3 Ken, 3 DD Guide, with the only special summons are being like Ecclesia if you have a monster special summon from the extra deck, which you're not gonna have every time, and some other aspects as well. So I decided to make another concession in the deck and add double summon and ultimate offerings. So those 2 cards, they basically let you have extra summons to a degree, and then you give them to the opponent, use one of those cards, normal Ecclesia, bam, it does the same thing. There's times you won't need any of these, do keep that in mind, okay? But when you do, you do. Now I'm going for the consistency cards. Small World, Pot of Prosperity. Pot of Prosperity is just by all means 3 extra copies of every other card in the deck, because it's so easy to like get something out of it. Like you're usually gonna get a piece like that you need, or when you don't, you get something else, which it's very nice. It's extra copies of defensive cards. Like this card, to have a notion, is like one of the most versatile cards in the game, in my honest opinion. Like personal opinion, I think Pot of Prosperity is just like the most versatile card in the game. Saravis is a defensive card for protection, right? We just discarded it to negate an effect that targets a card on the field. So usually we protect Albazoa, protect other stuff from it. From monsters that are not from the extra deck, like Marking a Fortress, for example, could also be a thing. Monster Reborn, Monster Rebirth, they kind of run together. Rebirth usually you use to bring back a monster that was destroyed by battle. Usually you bring back Albazoa, but you can also bring other stuff too. And Monster Reborn is there as well. So like if you end up drawing Monster Reborn, that card is still fine, so I think that's okay. And Droplet because he played in the show. That's literally because I scripted for him to have that card, so it's there. Alter Entity Entes, that's basically became a Dogmatica staple at this point. Like a lot of the decks that can send a fairy from the extra deck to the graveyard will definitely use this card. Like and this deck is no different. Like this deck is rip the extra or send stuff from the extra to the graveyard, the deck. So Entes does what it does. Wagon, it's similar to Entes to that degree, but it pops spell and traps, and I feel it's okay. Like you could play the other one. It's the what was the name again? It's Fossil Warrior Skull Knight. Yeah, that does for pop monsters. If you think like monster, it's more monster heavy, like you could replace it. But I think Wagon is cool for diversity. Garura, also very nice. If it's sent to the graveyard, you draw one card. There's several ways to trigger it. In the deck itself, like Dogmatic Matrix and Your Servant and many others. And there is also a Bucephalus. Since we're talking about Garura, I might as well talk about it. It means that you have a 3500 Garura to use for punishment, and the attack points on your monsters in the extra deck matter a lot, because it means that you have a limit on what you can out with punishment, and with this it just adds more. Like, so now the cap is what, 3500? Yeah, because like all the monsters are like very small than 35, so the cap is 35. You could even play like something like Five-Headed Dragon or Dragon Master Knight or Dragon Mega Master, right? Because they're 5,000. Like, there's nothing that is beyond 5,000 as like an original attack print. Like, you have stuff like Karmatile, but his original attack is 0, so it doesn't do anything here. But yeah, that's something also to consider. Grand Guignol is very nice. Like, it pairs well with Cartesia to send, like I said, Malong to out. And on your own turn, you could send stuff like Lulu Wailef to set up some plays. I think it's a decent card. Speaking of Lulu Wailef, this card is amazing. Like, just send this for free for Albazoa is huge. Like, it's just huge. Because it sets up Albazoa. Albazoa probably will half the extra deck of the opponent. And then this also could summon either Quem into Cartesia, but can also summon Ecclesia into Fleur de Lis. So in one way or another, you'll have some sort of interaction. So that's pretty nice. Malong is usually a target for anything really, like punishment could work as well. Mainly Great Guignol, I think. I think that's like the strongest fit that Great Guignol has, because it turns Great Guignol into an interaction. So do keep that in mind. Herald of Arclight. We're playing a ritual deck, so you gotta play those. We send them to the grave, and then they search a ritual spell or ritual monster. And usually you'll send it with Maximus, because you don't send with Nadir, nor with Punishment, because their attack is too low. Like, if you send them with Punishment, the maximum you can search is White Relic. Yeah, White Relic or White Knight. Meanwhile, this will only mean you'll pop anything that is 600 or less, which is not that many. Like, unless you're playing a deck that's just filled with 0 attack, 0 defense monsters, that's never going to come up. And then again, there's also better cards to send with Punishment and Nadir. So this usually you send with Maximus, so you can have an extra ritual spell or ritual monster just to complete something. Omega is also very nice, although, yes, like I said, most of those cards you don't even make, but they all have good graveyard effects. Omega can disrupt the graveyard. We can go shuffle Omega, shuffle something back into the deck, and then like we can just keep doing this. As long as we can keep sending Omega, we can keep shuffling like their graveyard resources back into the deck, which means they won't have those resources to play. Do keep that in mind. Also very good card. I remember when I was playing a more serious version of Dogmatica, I did this against Fiendsmith, and I've been shuffling like Engravers over and over. It's just so funny. Aggregator is... Most people already know this card, right? Like, especially now that he rised up with Rizio. It's just a nice card overall, right? Like, it negates something. And yeah, like every time it's sent to the grave, it negates something. That's very nice. Like, you can pair well with Punishment too, because you can go Punishment, pop something, and the Aggregator effect negates something else. So it deals with 2 cards at the same time. I think that's pretty cool. Now, the only 2 cards, like, actually, the only 4 cards, like, this is like the 4 cards you ever make. But we already talked about Grand Guignol. So, the last 3 cards that we make is Artemis, Almirage, and Secure Garden. So, Artemis is interesting because we can convert spellcasters into her, and then have like a monster that is special from the extra deck can be useful for putting your Dogmaticas on the field, like Aiden or Ecclesia, and even stuff like Fleur de Lis as well. And Almirage is for usually Gen, because Gen has less than 1,000, so you can normal Gen, special can draw 2, discard 1. Then we can go into All Mirage. And then as a bonus as well, you could go into Secure Guard now, which means it also sets up Maximus as a potential extension, right? Like if your Ecclesia gets stopped somehow. And that's it for the deck profile, at least this one, right? You all should be expecting as well a deck profile on both the Jester and Gale Darkwing. So just stay tuned on the channel. Like at some point, I don't know if it's gonna be posted everything at the same time or if it's gonna be posted one by one. We'll see how this goes, right? So I'll talk to you all in the next video. Peace out.